The most dangerous lie you've ever been told isn't a political deception or a historical distortion. It isn't even a personal betrayal by someone you loved. It's this: be good and you'll be free. That message, wrapped in warmth and whispered gently into your ear from the moment you could walk, was the first chain placed on you. And because it came with praise, rewards, smiles, and approval, you never questioned the cost. You were told that to be good is to be free, but that was never true. In reality, the version of goodness you were given was designed to tame you, to domesticate you, to make you acceptable, predictable, and harmless. And what you now call virtue may not be a reflection of your highest self at all. It might just be obedience wearing a mask. The training began early. Think back. You were praised when you followed the rules. You were rewarded when you said yes, when you shared, when you played nice, when you smiled even when you didn't want to. But what happened when you resisted? What happened when you said no, when you expressed anger, when you questioned authority? Punishment, withdrawal, shame. You learned very quickly that approval was conditional and that love came with strings attached. So, you adapted, like everyone does, not out of weakness, but out of survival. You figured out what made people like you, and you did that. You discovered what made them uncomfortable, and you hid it. That's where the fracture began. That's where the real self, the wild, curious, defiant self, started to split from the version you present to the world. And from that moment on, your life became a performance. Not because you're fake, but because you were trained to be. Virtue as a form of control. Look closely at the values you now hold sacred: humility, self-sacrifice, compliance, silence in the face of discomfort. Ask yourself, who benefits from these? When society tells you that the noble thing to do is to put others first, to swallow your truth, to serve quietly and without complaint, it frames that as moral excellence. But often it's just useful to the people in power. You've been taught that it's wrong to question, arrogant to speak up, selfish to say no, dangerous to take up space. Why? Because the more you dilute yourself, the easier you are to manage. This isn't a conspiracy, it's human nature. Systems favor control. Institutions love predictability. The herd must be kept intact. Dissidents must be made into pariahs. And so, goodness becomes a euphemism for submission. You become so accustomed to approval that you fear your own instincts. This isn't a conspiracy, it's human nature. Systems favor control. Institutions love predictability. Their herd must be kept intact. Dissidents must be made into pariahs. And so, goodness becomes a euphemism for submission. You become so accustomed to approval that you fear your own instincts. You equate rebellion with immorality. You mistake silence for maturity. You confuse shrinking with grace. The world loves the obedient. Let's not romanticize rebellion for its own sake. That's not the point here. But take a look around. Who does the world celebrate? Who gets rewarded? The ones who adapt well, the ones who blend in, the ones who follow the formula, the ones who don't make waves, don't challenge norms, don't threaten the system. But those who forge their own path, those who dare to ask dangerous questions, who live loudly and unapologetically, they're often feared, mocked, isolated, or erased. We build statues of revolutionaries only when they're dead. We teach the words of prophets and poets long after we've ignored them in their lifetimes. Society doesn't want you to wake up. It wants you to function. Nature doesn't want your comfort. Now let's talk about nature, the real teacher.
Not the sanitized version you see in documentaries, but the wild, violent, ungoverned force from which you come. Nature doesn't care about your comfort. She doesn't hand you morals on a plate. She doesn't provide a code of ethics. She simply presents the raw reality of life: growth, death, chaos, beauty, power. She doesn't say, "This is right." She asks, "Why do you think that's right?" She doesn't comfort your illusions. She shatters them. She doesn't guide you towards safety. She pushes you off the cliff and says, "Fly." And this is what great works of philosophy like Nietzsche's "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" attempt to awaken in you. When you read Zarathustra, you're not studying philosophy. You're hearing the primal roar of a soul who walked away from the herd and dared to look directly into the abyss. And what did he find? Not rules, not answers. He found the terrifying freedom of creating meaning for himself. This is not a video. It's a mirror. What you're hearing now isn't just a monologue. It's a confrontation, a mirror, one that you might not want to look into, because if you do, you'll see how much of your life has been shaped by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of losing love, fear of not being good enough. And so you traded your authenticity for approval. You forgot who you were before the world told you who you should be. This isn't an accusation. It's a reckoning. You are not broken. You are conditioned. You are not lost. You are buried. But now, it's time to dig. What this is not. Let's be clear. This is not a defense of arrogance, cruelty, or selfishness. This isn't about glorifying the ego or justifying harmful behavior. This is about something much deeper. Authenticity. The raw, burning truth that lives beneath the layers of performance, fear, and conditioning. The you that existed before the world told you who to become. You've been taught that to express yourself fully is dangerous, that intensity is unattractive, that power is threatening, that desire must be managed, that truth must be softened. And so you dull your edges, you dim your light, you wear the costume of goodness, hoping it will keep you safe. But it doesn't. It just keeps you small. The brutal truth. Here's the part that hurts the most. You already know all of this. That ache you feel when you lie to yourself, that tension in your chest when you stay silent, that quiet fury when you're passed over, dismissed, ignored. That's your real self. When you want to scream but smile. When you want to say no but say okay. When you want to leap but stay still. You've been trained to believe that your fire is dangerous, that your voice is too loud, that your strength is too much, that your desire for truth is ego, not essence. But maybe the opposite is true. Maybe your real danger is in not expressing it. Let it be dangerous. What if the part of you that wants to rise isn't wrong? What if the voice that wants to speak isn't arrogant? What if your power isn't something to tame, but something to embrace? Let it be dangerous. True virtue doesn't conform, it erupts. It isn't quiet, it roars. It doesn't follow the rules, it dares to rewrite them. The world needs more danger of that kind, more voices that burn through illusion, more lives that are lived unapologetically, rooted not in rebellion for its own sake but in truth. Because real virtue isn't in making others comfortable, it's in making yourself whole. No more shrinking. You have shrunk long enough. You have been softening, bending, dimming your light to make others comfortable. Enough. You were not born to be tame. You are not born to be polite when your soul demands passion. You are not born to be agreeable when your heart says no. You are not born to spend your life trying to be good according to standards that were never made for you. You were born to live from the core, to stand in your truth even when it trembles, to walk your path even when it's lonely, to roar even when they tell you to whisper. So what now? What are you supposed to do with this? You start by questioning everything, not with bitterness but with clarity, not with anger but with awakening. Ask yourself, whose values am I living by? Who benefits from my silence? What truths have I been hiding to be accepted? What parts of me have I buried to be loved? Who was I before I was told to behave? And then, slowly but surely, you begin to remember. You begin to reclaim your power, your voice, your wildness. You stop asking for permission. You stop apologizing for being too much. You stop calling your strength a flaw. You start living as yourself, not as a role you were cast to play.
If this message has stirred something in you, good, let it burn. Let it tear away the lies you've been living. Let it remind you that the life you crave will not be found in obedience. It will be found in honest rebellion, in sacred defiance, in the courage to live from your essence. No more shrinking, no more silencing, no more performing. You are not here to be good. You are here to be real. And if that's dangerous, then so be it. If any part of this speaks to something you felt but couldn't name, consider subscribing. Leave a comment. Let this be the place where the silenced parts of us finally get to speak. When Nietzsche declared, "God is dead," he wasn't being provocative. He wasn't mocking religion for the sake of controversy. He was announcing a cultural collapse, the end of absolute, unchosen truths. The death of God is not about whether a divine being exists. It's about the crumbling of unquestioned commandments, the fall of moral systems inherited rather than created. What follows is not peace, but chaos, not comfort, but the abyss. Without a fixed idea of good or evil handed down from above, we are forced to face the raw, terrifying question, what now? Birth of the Übermensch. From this void, Nietzsche gave us not despair, but a challenge. He planted the seed of a new kind of human, the Übermensch, the Overman. The Overman is not a tyrant. He is not a superhero. He is a creator. He does not rely on tradition or rebellion. He transcends both. He does not seek approval. He does not follow inherited morality. He builds values from within. The Overman walks without maps. He is not a final destination, but a direction, a becoming, a bridge between what we are and what we could be. But here's the tragedy. Most people never cross the bridge. They cling to borrowed beliefs. They hide in doctrine, in ideology, in identity. They settle in the safety of the known and fear the fire that would burn it all down. But rebirth always demands destruction. To become more, you must be willing to let the old self die. The lie of virtue. Let's speak honestly. Much of what you call virtue is not virtue. It is fear in disguise. It is obedience dressed up as nobility. This virtue demands, it drains. It teaches you that goodness means self-sacrifice, that to say no is selfish, that to stand for yourself is arrogant. It paralyzes. It tells you that being silent is strength, that being useful is love, that suffering quietly is what makes you worthy. But what if that's the very thing keeping you small? Nietzsche saw through this. He called it slave morality, a system created by the weak to condemn the strong. A morality born not of love, but of resentment. A code that praises submission only because it fears power. You were not born to be harmless.
You were not meant to suppress your fire.
The culture of guilt. Look closely. Much of modern virtue is rooted in guilt. People who constantly perform goodness often live in judgment, not just of others, but of themselves. They smile politely, but secretly hope you fail. Why? Because your freedom exposes their chains. Your authenticity threatens their performance. This is the tragic paradox. Those who are praised as good often carry deep resentment. They have been shrinking themselves for so long that they can't bear to see someone else stand tall. They don't want you to be free. They want you to fit in. If this message is making sense to you, if it's unsettling in all the right ways, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Let this be the place where we remember what it means to be real. Self-negation as virtue. How many times have you said yes when you meant no? How often have you silenced yourself to avoid discomfort? How long have you confused passivity with kindness? This is the internalized virtue, the quiet erasure of self in the name of being good. But true morality is not obedience. It is not submission. It is not about being harmless. It is about honesty, courage, living with eyes open and spine straight. Authenticity is dangerous to systems built on control, and that's exactly why it's necessary. The dangerous freedom. To be free, truly free, is terrifying. There is no divine checklist, no external scorecard. You must invent your own compass. You must answer the question, what matters, with your life, not with borrowed words. Freedom means risk. It means stepping into the unknown. It means walking away from applause and learning to live with silence. It means becoming someone the world might not approve of. But it also means waking up. It means breathing fully, living deeply, and finally, not asking for permission to exist. The choice. There is no savior coming, no system that will liberate you. There is only you and the choices you make. You can keep performing goodness and wondering why you feel dead inside. Or you can burn the performance and step into something real. You can stay in the herd, or you can become the bridge to something greater. The Overman is not a fantasy. He is a direction, a call to live without lies. But the price is everything you were taught to be. So if there's something in you that wants to break free, that wants to scream, create, challenge, rebuild, that refuses to live in a cage, let it. You were not made to be small. You were not made to be silent. You were not made to be good if goodness means death to your truth. Let it be dangerous. Let it be true. Let it be yours. And if this video lit even a single flame in the dark, don't let it go out. Subscribe, comment. Let's tear down the walls together. The virtue that gives, from martyrdom to abundance. Society has long praised a certain kind of virtue, one that turns people into martyrs and then demands they be proud of it. This virtue is not about inner freedom or strength. It's a construct designed to domesticate the spirit. It arises from resentment, not radiance. Friedrich Nietzsche, through the voice of Zarathustra, exposed this morality for what it truly is, a system built by the weak to contain the strong. These virtuous people live in perpetual judgment, masking their envy with smiles and using guilt as a tool to police others. You've felt it, haven't you? That guilt when setting boundaries? That hesitation to follow your inner compass, fearing you'd appear selfish? That's not virtue, that's conditioning. This is what Nietzsche termed slave morality, a framework where desiring is condemned, strength is shamed, and authenticity is stifled. From childhood, we're trained to see intensity as arrogance and self-assertion as ego. But there's another path, a virtue not rooted in guilt, fear, or recognition, but in overflow. A new kind of virtue, overflowing, not obligated. Nietzsche, through Zarathustra, offers not just a critique, but a revelation. In the chapter of the virtue that gives,
Zarathustra unveils a new morality, one born not of scarcity, but of abundance. It is not a virtue that withholds or demands, but one that shines, like the sun, without asking for applause. This virtue gives not out of duty, but because it must. Like a river overflowing or the sun shining, it cannot help but pour itself outward. It doesn't wait for praise, expect gratitude, or demand moral alignment. It gives because that's its nature. And here lies the break from traditional morality. Old virtue is based on repression. Don't desire, don't act, don't feel too much. But the virtue that gives celebrates fullness. It's not self-denial, it's self-expression. It's not suppression, it's expansion. Virtue as being, not behavior. You've likely been taught that virtue requires effort, that you must struggle, suppress your instincts, and earn your worth. Nietzsche flips that script. True virtue, he says, does not arise from sacrifice, but from a human being so full of life that they cannot help but give. Imagine a cup that overflows, not because it's told to, but because it cannot contain its fullness. This is the essence of the giving virtue. It flows from the soul, untamed by approval or fear. It's art without audience, generosity without recognition, love without condition. But to live like this, to embody such a virtue, requires a radical shift in perception. It means no longer striving to be good, but simply being whole. Because when you are whole, giving is not a decision, it is inevitable.
Creating without clinging. Even this radiant virtue must die. Zarathustra gives everything and then withdraws, not in defeat, but in wisdom. The sun too must set. No virtue, however pure, escapes the cycle of life and death. This is where Nietzsche reaches maturity. He does not promise eternal virtue or endless giving. He acknowledges impermanence. True creators know when to let go, when to stop, when to vanish. Because even giving, if done endlessly, becomes corrupted. It turns into attachment, into a craving for applause, into a dependency on being needed. The free spirit gives and then leaves. They do not demand recognition. They do not cling to legacy. They move on, allowing life to flow. This is detachment in its highest form. Ask yourself, what are you trying to keep alive that should have already died? An identity? A mission? A relationship? Nietzsche urges you to release it, to let go even of what once was noble, because all things must pass, and in their passing, new life is born. The power of silence and withdrawal. Zarathustra retreats not as a failure, but as a necessity. After pouring everything out, the spirit must replenish. Silence is not absence, it is restoration. In a world obsessed with noise, activity, and visibility, this silence is an act of rebellion and rebirth. Our culture worships presence. It demands that you always show up, always perform, always give. If you disappear, you are forgotten. If you stop giving, you are judged. But Zarathustra shows another way. He chooses solitude, not to hide, but to return to the source. Silence, emptiness, isolation, these are not weaknesses, they are sacred. In silence, you remember who you are. You realize that you are valuable even when you are not doing, even when no one is watching. Rebuilding in the void. If you feel exhausted, dry, or unseen, perhaps it is your time to retreat, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because true giving requires a full cup, and if you are empty, the most virtuous thing you can do is pause. Do not be afraid to disappear for a while. Silence the world. Reconnect with yourself. This is where power is reborn. This is where authenticity regenerates. In the void, you become whole again. Write this to yourself. I choose the silence that rebuilds me. Let it be your commitment. Let it be your starting point. Because virtue is not about proving yourself. It's about remembering yourself. Not about living outward, but inward, not about effort, but essence.